say how, there's always been an exchange. There's always been an exchange. Even in the Bible, y'all go to Genesis chapter 38, you see Judah, who Jesus Christ is the descendant of the tribe of Judah. So this is supposed to be like the tribe of all of the 12 tribes, because it's the one that the Messiah comes from. But you see prostitutes in the genealogy of Jesus Christ that get a shout out and an honorable mention in the first chapter of Matthew when he goes through the chronology. And they usually didn't list women when they would list genealogy, but in there you see the prostitute gets a shout out and an honorable mention. But in Genesis 38, Judah, who's traveling, he's away from his family, he comes across this woman who's dressed like a harlot. Because back in those days, if you were about that life, you dressed like you were about that life. Still kind of today, like Dave Chappelle said in one of his shows, if you dress like a police officer, I'm going to think you're a police officer. If you dress in a certain way, we're going to treat you like, because you got the uniform on. So they still had uniforms back then. And he saw that Tamar had on the attire. She was dressed like a harlot, but she was covered because he couldn't identify her. And he trying to get some and didn't even have no money. She's like, what you going to give me? He was like, please, can I turn in unto thee? And she was like, well, what you going to give me? And he was like, well, I don't have no money. I'm like, that's a whole nother thing right there. People trying to get something for nothing. He was like, well, I don't have any money. And she was like, well, what do you have? And he was like, well, I have this staff, stick. I have this staff. I have my ring, my insignia. And he gave her some other stuff. And she's like, I bet. And he sleeps with her. She gets pregnant. Later on, they find out that who it was that he had slept with. And this brings it back to last week's conversation about birth control. He ended up sleeping with his own daughter-in-law. Tamar was his daughter-in-law, the one that got killed when Onan withdrew. He ended up sleeping with his own daughter-in-law, impregnating his own daughter-in-law. And when you read the story, when he found out that she was pregnant and wasn't married, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, stone her to death. Because she's supposed to wait until I send her another son to marry. But the youngest son was like a teenager, so she's going to be waiting for a while. And his first thing was, let's kill her, because she out here doing this stuff. She ain't married, blah, blah, blah. Kill her.
Didn't you say he got her pregnant, though?
He got her pregnant, but he didn't know who it was. Because while she had on the attire of a harlot, her face was she still had to be covered. So he didn't
way too much. First of all, that's hot. You all want me.
When he gets ready to kill her, they bring her. She's good and pregnant. And they bring her. All the men are ready to stone her to death. And then she pulls out his stuff and she said, the man who owns this stuff is the man I'm pregnant by. And he was like, oh, snap. Because the law said he was supposed to be stoned too.
Well, get another pile of rocks, bruh.
So
we going together.
Just like, and this bring it full circle, I always bring it full circle back to the day. He changed the law to protect himself. When it came down to him having to be accountable for his behavior, at the same measure he was trying to hold her accountable, he changed the law. And he was like, she's more righteous than I, so we're just gonna let her go. So nobody got killed that day.
So we gonna start a church at this point. This is what I'm seeing is about to happen was.
So it brings it back to the laws that you opened up with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It brings it back to what Stacey was saying about the product of the womb and people paying for sex and this being the oldest profession, and men been shady in their sexual dealings since Genesis.
I just want to flip this table over. I'm so irritated right now. My soul is just